Ordinary out loud self talk is not by itself a sign that something is wrong. Research on private speech and self talk treats it as normal human behavior that can serve cognitive and behavioral functions. So, if you are someone like me who happens to dabble in a little bit of just out loud self talk, you may very well be just exhibiting normal human behavior. Welcome, family, to another episode of the Thoughts of an Empath podcast. It's your host, Steve St. Ville, and as always, it's a blessing and an honor to be here with y'all for real. First and foremost, we gotta show love to God. We gotta give thanks to God for just allowing us to be here together in this space, getting ready for another amazing conversation, and to invite God into this space and to center ourselves in this space. I would like to just invite y'all to just take a nice full deep breath along here with me. Let's take a nice full deep breath in through your nose. Hold it for a few moments. And then when you're ready, just calmly let it go. I appreciate you so much. I'm looking forward to today's conversation. I'm looking forward to another human level conversation. And that's what we're all about here at the Thoughts of an Empath podcast, having conversations that get us thinking a little bit deeper, get us connecting with each other a little bit deeper, and get us poised and in position to where we can use and leverage certain skills and tools to help us navigate just those everyday challenges and have some conversations that we may not get the opportunity to have, but are vitally important to our mental well-being and our overall growth. So again, I just want to thank y'all for popping out, for being here with me in this time. Got to do some promo and some housekeeping. I first want to encourage y'all to like and subscribe. Please, please, please. Your support means so much to the vision for what we are doing. Me personally and Thoughts of an Empath as an organization, all that we are doing, we so greatly appreciate your support. So again, like, subscribe. If you appreciate or find some level of value from the conversation, share it with somebody that you love and care about. And definitely tap in with us on our social platforms. On Instagram, you can find the organization at Human Level Conversations, and our official website is thoughtsofanempath.org. That's the central hub. Anytime we got something going on, you'll be sure to get all the necessary information at thoughtsofanempath.org. Got a quick announcement. We have an upcoming event, Open Lounge, on April 17th. At 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, April 17th at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. The lounge is opening up. Y'all know, if you've ever been to an open lounge, you know what type of space it is. That is our open discussion series. All are welcome. We want to encourage you to pop out, feel encouraged to share your story, connect with some dope individuals. And as always, we always want to share like something practical, something that you could take home with you and you can use in your day-to-day to again help you along that journey of becoming the best version of yourself. So we want to encourage you and invite you out to Open Lounge for some community time where we get to have some of those human level conversations. And before we jump into today's episode, just want to share a quick disclaimer. This podcast is a space for open and honest conversation. The views and opinions expressed by the host and any guests are their own and do not reflect the views of Thoughts of an Empath Incorporated, nor any organizations or groups that our guests may be affiliated with. Our intention is to create a safe environment for dialogue, reflection, and growth. Please remember that these conversations are meant to inspire thought and connection and should not be taken as professional advice. As always, we want to remind you and ourselves that life is grand when we allow it to be. All right, let's get into this one. I'm excited for this because this is a conversation around something that I would hear a lot about, and one of those kind of societal stigmas that I grew up with. And just to jump right into it, the whole concept of talking to yourself as a means of, as evidence of you not being right in the mind. Now, we live in 2026. It's 2026 right now. And the mental health conversation has never been more open than any time in human history, as far as we know. But how your mind and the health of your mind is so important, and I'm so grateful to be having these conversations. Like, me personally, I'm grateful that we're having these conversations, not just because I do work in that space, but because I recognize the value in the conversations around mental health, because mental health is obviously a real thing. And so navigating the fullness of where our mental health could be and that full spectrum, one of those things that I grew up hearing oftentimes, like many other individuals, is that if you talk to yourself, you're a little bit crazy. And I'm going to be honest with y'all. Talking to myself has been, for me, one of the most grounding tools and practices that I use to help support my mental health, to be completely honest. But I got to thinking, like, yo, if this thing is so helpful for me, why is it that growing up, I would hear that if you talk to yourself, that means you're not right in the mind. So I did a little bit of digging. 2026, y'all. Use your tools that's available to you. So I used some tools to help me do some research, some AI tools. And the evidence that I found was actually quite interesting, because not only is the idea of talking to yourself not what society may have painted it to be, the way when I was growing up anyway, it can actually be seen, when backed by research, as a natural human function. A natural human function. Now, again, I was raised in the 90s. So the conversation around mental health was nowhere near what it is now. And in the community that I grew up in, the idea that talking to yourself, let alone out loud, where people can see you actually talking to yourself, is something that was frowned upon. It's something that was frowned upon. You were not looked as mentally stable. You were looked as a crazy individual. And they threw that word out loosey goosey for sure. However, when we abide by these types of societal stigmas, we don't recognize the inherent harm that we may be doing to ourselves. So for me, again, the practice has been extremely helpful to just kind of flush out some of my thoughts. When I speak to myself out loud, I'm able to actually physically hear what it is that I'm saying and process the information that I'm going through. So that has been extremely helpful to me whenever I find myself in a situation where I'm having trouble making a decision, or just filtering out different information. And I'm gonna be, again, honest with y'all. I like to ramble a little bit. If you've ever been in a personal conversation with me, you can recognize that I tend to ramble sometimes. However, through practice and intention, I've learned how to now kind of tie in my rambling back to a grounded point. And that's something that I had to work on. But at its core, the practice of just being able to talk to yourself, to me, is not only something that deals with our mental health, but it deals with our spiritual health as well. Now, let me paint a picture for you. Or let me ask you a question, better yet. How do you get to know somebody? How do you get to know somebody? Oftentimes we get to know people not in the typical 2026 internet technologically induced way of looking through their Instagram pages and their social media platforms. You spend time with that individual. You talk to them. You listen to them. You understand what are their influences, what are their values, how were they raised. All of these things go into building a deep relationship with somebody. And from my observation, I recognize that many individuals don't do this with themselves. How are you going to get to know yourself better if you don't talk to yourself? How are you going to understand what are your influences? What are the things that have conditioned you? What are the experiences that have shaped you if you don't spend time with yourself? If you don't do that work, the way I look at it, if you don't do that work, and this is a deeply spiritual work, the way I look at it, if you're not intentionally investing in that, then how are you going to have a clear and grounded vision and vantage point of who you are as an individual? So I want you to really think about that. Because again, I come from a time where talking to yourself was viewed as something that only people who are admitted into mental asylums do. And don't get it twisted. I did a little bit of research on that too, and it clarified it for me as well, to where if you are having hallucinations, if you're having delusions, or you're like losing your touch with actual reality, then that's a whole different situation. I'm talking about how you talk to yourself up here, and if you occasionally just happen to talk to yourself out loud. Because the things that we say to ourselves are loaded with power. The power of life and death is in the tongue. I know some of y'all have heard that before. And that is valid, because what we say to ourselves is conditioning our internal world. And the internal world now reflects into our external experience. There's been research now that says our brains don't know the difference between when we're lying to ourselves or when we're being serious. So even if we're saying something internally or out loud, but even if we're saying something as a joke, our brain is going to take that as truth. So we have to be extremely intentional with how we talk to ourselves on the inside and on the outside. Now, I remember after leaving my job, this is back in 2018, and into the 2019 years, and then into 2020, COVID hit. I had a lot of free time. And that's when I started developing, you know, what is now the Thoughts of an Empath organization and the Thoughts of an Empath podcast. But when I was sitting at home, just kind of going through my thoughts and just reflecting on things that I may have been studying, I remember my mom, every now and then, she would pass by my room, or she would just hear me talking out loud, and she would poke her head in the room and she'll be like, "Who are you talking to?" And I'm like, honestly, at first, I felt ashamed. It felt weird. I felt like I was being judged. And because of that, I kind of shied away from openly expressing that I was using that practice. But as I got deeper within myself, real talk, y'all, she would continue to do it. Poke her head in. "Who you talking to?" "I'm talking to myself, Mom. What's the problem? What you need?" And she'd be like, "Don't you know it's only crazy people that talk to themselves?" And I'm like, "That's what you think." And so it got to a level where I had to be willing to stand on the practices that I know worked for me, despite what anybody outside of me may have thought or may have been raised in. And this is why I say those societal constructs and those societal stigmas can be very, very harmful, because if we're too tapped in with what society says we should be doing, then we're not giving ourselves the space and grace to actually implement the practices that are going to help us develop a healthy relationship with ourselves. But today we want to not just talk about it. We want to see what the research says, because everybody wants the research nowadays. So again, I asked my AI assistant to do some research on, like, unbiased research on what are the effects of out loud self-talk. And some of the results that came back is, first, ordinary out loud self-talk is not by itself a sign that something is wrong. Research on private speech, self-talk, research on private speech and self-talk treats it as normal human behavior that can serve cognitive and behavioral functions. So off rip, we see, and I kind of love this about 2026 and just the age that we're living in. A lot of the BS that many of us grew up with is being debunked left and right, left and right. And I love it, because the truth gonna set us free, y'all. The truth is going to set us free. And unfortunately, many of us were raised in environments that hid the truth from us. Not because they wanted to harm us, but because that's just maybe what our parents learned from their parents and their grandparents and so on and so forth. And now we have a whole generation that's talking about breaking generational curses and establishing generational wealth. This requires being willing to face the things that have challenged our generations over time, and now implementing strategies and systems that are going to support the generations to come. So, using a researched backed approach, self-talk and out loud self-talk can be a normal human behavior. So if you are someone like me who happens to dabble in a little bit of just out loud self-talk, or talking to yourself, or thinking out loud, or however you want to phrase it, however you want to characterize it, you may very well be just exhibiting normal human behavior. So don't judge yourself. Don't look down upon yourself. I promise you, I've been there. And I just want to encourage you to use this as an opportunity to stand on what you know works for you. So now that we've established that self-talk is not something that just automatically makes you an insane individual, or that you need some level of medical or mental attention, let's dig a little bit deeper into how can we optimize our self-talk. Again, I said earlier, the power of life and death is in the tongue. And I'm someone who believes that everything happens in the spiritual before it happens in the physical. And the way we have conversations with ourselves is a deeply spiritual practice. What do you say to yourself when it is just you? However, we want to shift the conversation again into how can we start to optimize this? How can we start to optimize this? What are some things that we can do through our self-talk, and how can it be effective for us? First things first is a widely used practice that I teach on this when I'm doing social emotional skills coachings with students and parents and teachers. However, you'd be surprised at how many individuals just kind of feel like this practice is silly at its core. And it might seem silly, but it's truly a deeply powerful practice. Again, a spiritual practice in my belief, and that's just using affirmations. I am powerful. I am worthy. I am loved. I am capable. I can do this. I will not give up. Any type of affirmation that you use to help enrich yourself internally is you choosing to stand in your power. Because the way this works psychologically is, again, the brain doesn't know whether what you're saying is reality or a lie. Regardless of your intention for saying it, it's just going to take it all as truth. So if you're constantly telling yourself that you are worthy, that you are capable, that you are loved, that you are beautiful, that you are smart, that you are wise, that you are all of these different things, sooner or later, your brain is going to start to believe these things. And the more your brain believes this, it's literally an algorithm. Your brain is going to look for evidence in your surrounding environment to support that thought. So when we're talking to ourselves, let's be intentional about speaking of ourselves in the highest of favor. Talk to yourself as if you are that thing that you want to become. Because in reality, you already are. But that's a conversation for another day. We're going to talk, and I've been doing some research on 4D, the fourth dimension. That stuff is mind-blowing. And as a teaser, because for sure, I know this is a conversation that I want to have. I am exploring the idea that anxiety and depression and mental illnesses are fourth dimensional problems. However, we're going about the treatment of it in a third dimensional way, which is why some of us may be struggling with it. So I'm just going to leave that right there because I want to give myself the necessary time to do a bit more research, but then to structure out an actual full episode around that so we can really get into that good stuff. However, being intentional about talking to yourself in the highest of favor, and if you practice that regularly, it may sound ridiculous at first. It may be silly at first. You may feel like I've been telling myself this for a week and I don't feel no different. Try 2 weeks. Give it a month. Continue with the practice so that your brain can learn consistently. It's receiving that you are this thing that you are pouring into yourself, because that's one of the main ways that we learn: repetition. If you constantly have something repeated to you, I have these laws that I tell my daughter, and I repeat them with her over and over and over and over and over. And I've been doing it for a long time. So much to the point where I can go a couple days and not say it to her. But then I'll pull up on her and say, hey, what's the rule of nice things? What's the rule of helping? What is patience? What are consequences? What is bravery? And she knows just off rip what the response is. So using that, by the way, yo, tapping with the children, y'all. The Studying my daughter has been such a beautiful way for me to learn a lot more about myself, but also how we function as individuals and how we learn. But again, repetition is one of those main ways that we as individuals learn. So if you're constantly telling yourself something powerful, then you are going to now believe that you are powerful. You are now going to believe that you are worthy. And best believe, we need you to stand in that power. We need you to recognize that you are able and fully equipped to create the life that you want for yourself. Please don't take that lightly, because I don't take that lightly. However, again, I just want to encourage y'all, in whatever fashion that you use it, use this self-talk to enrich yourself. Use this self-talk to validate yourself. That way you don't go looking for that validation elsewhere. And it's helpful. Like, it's not just me going off of my own experience, which I hold in very high regard. However, there is research behind it. So I want to encourage you to do the research for yourself as well, behind how we talk to ourselves, and especially how we talk to ourselves out loud, being very helpful in the way that we process information and the way that we navigate challenges. Something I do as well, I would notice that I would do this, is like talking to third person. I would talk to myself. I would say my own name when I'm speaking out loud. And there's research on that. They call it distanced self-talk. Can also be very helpful when used in the proper ways. So I again just want to encourage y'all to leverage these skills. We are in a new time where we are being introduced to so many new resources, and at the same time we are now given the information that allows us to recognize that, yo, what I had been given prior to may not be in alignment with where I'm going now. And I want to be the first one to encourage you to stand on what you know helps you become the best version of yourself. Because that's what the journey that we on. If you watching this podcast, I pray that you on that journey. The journey of just standing in the best version of yourself and making those decisions day in and day out. That is how we come together. That is how you enrich yourself. And after you've enriched yourself, pull up to Open Lounge so that you could tell us and you can share with the community some of the things that you've learned and some of the practices that you may have developed and how they have helped you, and share your testimony, because we want to give you the platform and the space to share that testimony. So, Rich family, I want to wrap this all up. First off, I appreciate y'all so much. Oh my gosh, I love y'all. I appreciate y'all for rocking out. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, tap in with us on Instagram. Whew. Check out the website so you got all the information that you need for the next open lounge or any type of events that we got going on. I love y'all so much. For real. And I again just want to wrap this all up by encouraging y'all. When it comes to talking out loud, when it comes to talking to yourself, you are not crazy. As long as you are navigating the practice in a healthy framing, then talking to yourself can be one of the most, for me it has been, but one of the most helpful tools to your self-regulation and your inner growth. I appreciate y'all so much. So much. I look forward to hearing about the growth that you will experience. And please be encouraged to share that experience in the comment. I know there's a lot of wisdom out there. So feel encouraged to comment your wisdom. We want to hear it. We want to promote it. We want to tap in. And if you're interested in being a part of Open Lounge, our virtual discussion group, again, visit thoughtsofanempath.org. You can get all the necessary information. You can get the links, the dates, the time. This coming, forgive me, let me give you the actual date. April 17th. Again, April 17th. We will be opening the lounge, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the topic, for those that's been rocking, that made it to the end of the video, I got a surprise for y'all. I got a gift for y'all. The topic is turning your losses into lessons. How we can learn how to lose with grace, but then extract the wisdom from those situations that will now help us to move forward in power. So again, I love y'all. I appreciate y'all so much. This is Steve St. Ville. And until next time, I hope y'all have an amazing day. Thank you for tuning in to the Thoughts of an Empath podcast.